Thanks very much. Okay, welcome to today's call. Today we're going to talk about preprints. So it's going to be very much an introductory session to preprints. With myself, I am head of community at PREreview. We're an open platform for the review of preprints. And with me today is also Aneth Davis, who is a fellow rising scholar and also PREreview champion of 2025. So we're going to go through a little bit more about ourselves, first of all. So I'm based in Oxford in the UK. I have worked within the open science space within about 10 years now. I actually previously started my journey in the open science space by working at INASP back in, probably 8 years ago now, so quite a while back. And then I worked at Crossref, and then I'm at PREreview. In all these roles, I've always worked in a community capacity. So I really love working with others around the world and helping folks to understand more about open science, get involved, teach others. That's where my passion lies. My own academic background is in applied and professional ethics. And outside of work, I love fantasy fiction, playing board games, lots of social activities there as well. And with me today is Aneth. So I'm just going to pass over to Aneth to say hello.
Hi, everybody. My name is Aneth David. I am a biotechnologist based at University of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, but also a rising scholar, champion, or advocate of open research and open knowledge. And I just finished as part of the cohort of Open PREreview Champions 2025. I live in Dar es Salaam with my family and my research assistant here. And my favorite thing to do is to be in nature, especially forests. I love plants and books. So that's about me. Back to you, Vanessa. Thanks.
Thanks, Aneth. And if you would like to say hello as well, please do say hello in the chat. We love to know who's on the call today. So please tell us your name, where you're joining from. And if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll hopefully have some time at the end to answer these. But you can pop them into the chat as and when they come up, and we'll do our best to answer them. So these are our group agreements today. So this webinar follows the Chatham House rule. This means that anyone here is free to use any information from our discussion, but please do not attribute any particular comments to any particular people. Please feel free to eat, stretch, move, step away as you need to. Make space for others and for others who may feel less comfortable talking than you. We won't actually have any breakout rooms today, but sometimes we do in our workshops, so this is more applicable then. And please do be open to, curious, and respectful of different opinions and experiences. Are there any other group agreements or guidelines that anyone would like to add to this list for today before we get started? Feel free to pop them in the chat or use the raise hand function. Okay, not seeing anything, so I will move on. This is also our technical guidelines for today. So please do stay muted to cut down on any background noise unless you are speaking, which I can see everyone is already doing, so fantastic. You can ask questions at any time by using the raise hand function in Zoom and unmuting, or you can also just type your question into the chat and we'll be happy to answer it there. If you do unmute, try to speak slowly and clearly. Do tell your facilitators, so myself and Aneth, if we are not speaking slowly and clearly enough for you. There are captions available in Zoom, so if you need this, you should be able to find this in the sort of more settings in your Zoom toolbar. Keep your camera on if you're able to aid understanding and break down barriers. And you're also always free to use reactions to share what you're thinking or feeling. So if there's usually a reaction function again in the sort of Zoom toolbar, if you want to use those. And finally, this is our code of conduct at PREreview. We always have this at the beginning of our events, and we expect all of our participants to our events to abide by our code of conduct. So please do use welcoming and inclusive language, provide feedback that's constructive, be respectful of different viewpoints, gracefully accept criticism yourself and show empathy towards other participants today. If you do feel uncomfortable or unwelcome at any point during today's webinar, you can always send an email to us at report@prereview.org, or we also have a code of conduct incident report form, and all reports will be handled with discretion by PREreview safety team. And if you'd be able to share the link that's in the slides into the chat for that, that would be very helpful. Okay. And our objectives today. So today we're going to cover, we've only got 1 hour, so this is going to be quite a brief sort of overview of these things, and then we're going to have some more details next week at our second session. Today we're going to go over kind of the basics of what is open science, what do we mean by open access, what are preprints, what are some of the benefits and challenges of preprints, where can I find and submit preprints, and what is open preprint review. And then we'll have some opportunities for how you can further engage in these things. We'll also have a session next week, more specifically about peer review and how you can peer review openly on preprints. And we're also going to use Mentimeter a little bit during today. So although we won't have breakout sessions, we'd love to hear from you and your experiences. So when prompted, we'll have a couple of Mentimeter prompts. Please do use those. And if you're not able to use Mentimeter for whatever reason, you can also feel free to type your answers into the chat as well. Are there any questions before we actually get started with the content? Okay. I'm not seeing any hands up or questions in the chat, but if anything does come up, feel free to add it into the chat and let us know. So, change my slide. There we go. So we're going to start all the way back to basics about when, where, and how we share our research. So throughout history, scholars have shared their discoveries in different ways, and this has evolved alongside technological and cultural shifts. So all the way back in kind of ancient times, in sort of the 1600s, there was more oral traditions and letters. So early scholars shared knowledge through oral teachings, letters, private correspondences. Here's an example this is a letter that Isaac Newton wrote that exchanged ideas with William Briggs, asking for some feedback. And this was how things were done back in the day. So very much kind of quite a closed system, more individuals to other individuals. Moving on to kind of the 1600s to the 1800s, here we had the formation of societies and journals, starting with kind of the Royal Society of London in 1660 and the Academy of de Science in 1666. And these led to the first scientific journals, which also formalized sort of peer review and communication in science in this way. Moving on then into sort of the 1800s and 1900s, we had print and institutionalization. So scientific publishing expanded. There's many different institutions and universities, many different journals, and this reinforced the sort of journal-based dissemination of knowledge, and peer review became a very standard practice in terms of the traditional peer review process that a journal does. And then we get to the current day. So we've got sort of the 1900s to the present. We're now in sort of the digital age, and the open science revolution. So the internet revolutionized access and allows for, at least from a technical point of view, much more easy and fast ways to disseminate research outputs, to get your research out there, a lot more easier for people to be able to access it, and also a lot more diverse ways in which people can share knowledge. So the when, the where, and the how we share research has changed quite dramatically throughout history. And the question I want to ask here is, why do we share research? So what is the number one motivator that pushes us to share knowledge? So we've got here a Mentimeter prompt. So you can scan the QR code that you see on the screen. You can also, Andy, if you could share the link actually to this Mentimeter, it will be the same link for all of our questions today. Or you can also go to menti.com and type in this code that you see on the screen. And what I want to ask you here is, why do you want to share your research? So what motivates you to share knowledge? So thank you, Andy, for sharing that in the chat. If you are unable for whatever reason to access this, you can also share your answer in the chat. That's absolutely fine. I'll give a couple more minutes and then I will share some of the responses on the screen. And let us know if it's not working for whatever reason. I have not actually tested it. So if it's not working, please do let me know. Okay, I'm going to exit this so I can actually share my other screen. See what some folks are saying. And you don't need to overthink this. It's very much just kind of, what motivates you as a researcher to share your knowledge? Why is it that you want to share your knowledge? The point of this exercise is to think about kind of how that aligns with the actual publishing system that we have, and does it actually serve the needs of the people who are making the research and who want to share their research? So thank you for the comments so far. So to build up the body of knowledge on the area of my specialization, strengthening public health through dissemination and community engagement, because they think it might be useful to others to build a body of knowledge and science and provide solutions from research. Yep. Give a couple more minutes for other people to join and make sure that they make their contributions. I said before, if you're unable to access, you can always just make your notes into the chat as well. So we've also got to be known through my contribution in science and research, and to have others' inputs and criticism to contribute to the body of knowledge. So yeah, thank you very much for all of that. Feel free to continue adding to this. I will go back to my presentation. So the reason I asked this is to think about kind of how we think about the research cycle and what kind of how open science fits into this. So continuing thinking about this, obviously there's a lot that happens in the background before we get to sharing the final product, as it were. So if we think about how research is produced, there's a lot of steps involved, and at numerous stages of the journey, there's information sharing with different people, different parties, such as there's proposals, there are planning documents, there's data, there's code, and these get shared with different people at different times. However, traditionally, we don't see many of these outputs or have a clear idea of what is involved or who is involved in the whole process. And even the final paper can sometimes still be hidden behind a paywall. And this is not really in line with what we've just seen folks share in the Mentimeter. So people want to be able to contribute to the body of knowledge, to get credit and recognition, to be able to share their outputs with others easily. And that actually doesn't fit well with the traditional publishing system, where a lot of these things happen in the dark and aren't actually accessible to many people. There are now lots of initiatives nowadays promoting the sharing of some of these earlier outputs as well, like data and methodologies, which not only helps to build a fuller picture and understanding of the research process, but can also help people get feedback at earlier stages. It helps with reproducibility, and it also ensures that this information is publicly available. And this is kind of what we're talking about when we talk about open science generally. So it's not just the final publication, but it's all of these other things that go along with it, all of these different contributions and different processes. And open science, therefore, is not just open access, but it encapsulates a lot of different components. This is an example by UNESCO about understanding open science. So you've got their kind of open scientific knowledge, and there's like the scientific publications themselves, but there's also open source software, open code, open data, open educational resources. You've got open science infrastructures, so virtual and physical ones, different ways to engage. So there's different societal actors, so that you have citizen and participatory science, crowdsourcing, scientific volunteering. And you've also got open dialogue with other knowledge systems. So this might be different localized communities, marginalized scholars, indigenous peoples as well. So it's a much bigger, broader picture than just open access. So we want to just start with that note to keep that in mind. And we are going to move on to talking specifically about preprints, I promise. And here I just want to mention kind of what is open access. So here we've got a definition. This is by the Berlin Declaration on Open Access to Knowledge in the Sciences and Humanities back in 2003. And here we've got that open access requires that to qualify as open access. Sorry, the Berlin Declaration requires that to qualify as open access, a contribution must be not only usable and free of charge, but users must also be permitted to copy, use, distribute, transmit, and display the work publicly, and to make and distribute derivative works in any digital medium for any responsible purpose, subject to proper attribution. So that's quite long and wordy. And basically, there's different ways in which open access can also be implemented. And you may have heard of some of these before, you may not. So, and it can get a little bit confusing in terms of how people regard different things. So you've got green open access, and this is publishing in a journal perhaps that's open access. Here, there's no cost to publication, and the license is by the author or the publisher's choice. So it's usually an open license. So it's open access. It doesn't cost anything to access the work. It also doesn't cost anything to publish the work. You've got diamond, oh, sorry, yeah, I think I'm confusing myself now. You've also got diamond open access, which is full and immediate open access publishing without any, again, article processing charges. Here, the license is by Creative Commons, and it's usually an open license. Gold open access, which you may have heard of, is where it's free to read the research and access it, but there is a payment that the author needs to make, so an APC, an article processing charge. And these sometimes can be quite high. So it's not always as open as perhaps green or diamond. Hybrid open access, so this is when an article or a chapter is published in a paywalled journal. The author does still pay an article processing charge, but it is then still openly available. So although the journal in itself might have some parts of it that are paywalled, not all of it is. And then we've got bronze open access. So this is immediate or delayed free contents without a clear open license or reuse permission. So it doesn't have a clear license on it. You might argue perhaps it's not always open access as clearly there. And what is a preprint? So preprints would fall into sort of the realm of a green open access as described in this slide. So you would choose where to publish a preprint. It wouldn't have any cost to being published. It would be ever openly available, and the author would choose the license. The author would choose the license and also the platform to publish it on, and what licenses go along with that. And a preprint is a scientific manuscript that is uploaded by authors to a public server. The preprint contains data and methods, but has not yet undergone journal organized peer review. And this is from the ASAP Bio preprint FAQ section. ASAP Bio have tons and tons of research about preprints. So if you want to read more, they have a really helpful website that you can explore. So I'd like to ask at this point, who has read a preprint? Use the raise hand function, or you can type yes in Zoom. So one hand, couple of hands. Yeah. And it might even be that you have read a preprint, but you haven't realized that you're reading a preprint. That's also possible. Um, yeah, thank you. And to make it clearer, I just want to show how a preprint is slightly different to the traditional model. So I apologize that the green open access symbol shouldn't have popped up just yet, because I have a couple of animations here. But this slide is meant to illustrate the traditional peer review process that's carried out by a journal along the bottom of the slide here. And for most of journals, this happens kind of in the dark, outside of the public eye. So as you may well know, the manuscript is submitted by authors to a journal. It then goes through peer review, successfully or unsuccessfully, often for multiple rounds, and it's not before sometimes several months or years that the manuscript then reaches the public. And if it does, it then could still be behind a paywall. So it may not still be openly available, even to the people that published the work. So even the authors would need to pay to be able to access the published work. Preprints, however, also allow for the early sharing of the research output. And it all happens in the open. So you have your manuscript, you have it ready, you post it onto a preprint server, and then this also enables the doors to, community feedback at a point in time when changes can still be made. So this is the point in time when it can have community feedback. It's already out there. It's openly available. People can use the research, people can read it, and you can still then submit it to a journal later. And most journals nowadays do allow you to submit preprints first. Journals have different policies. Some of them will not allow it, some of them will. Some of them actually mandate nowadays that you have to publish it as a preprint first. So you would have to check the policies that your journal has that you want to submit to know about this. But it's becoming much more common to post a preprint. Your work is out there, you can get feedback in the meantime, and it's not all sort of hidden for many months or years before you can get it out to the public. So, second question, who here has published or plans to publish a preprint? So same thing, use your raise hand function. See a couple of hands up. That's great. Wonderful. Just good to know who's in the room. And I also have in a second sort of Mentimeter question for people. And this doesn't matter if you've posted a preprint before or read a preprint before, but knowing what we've just gone through, what do you think you would see as the main benefits of posting preprints? And Andy, if you could reshare, I think it's already quite there, actually, recent in the chat, but thank you again for resharing it. So you've got the link there, and I'll sort of go on to, should be able to go on to the second slide. So yeah, what do you see as the main benefits of posting preprints? Let me know if you're not able to access that question. You should be able to. And again, if you're not able to, you can also use the chat. And I also see a raised hand. Is this for a question, or are you just raising your hand? Okay, that's fine. If you do have a question, you can also ask that. So thank you, Hannah, for feedback. For early dissemination, open to the public review, critics, getting research out there more quickly, speed. Yep. Work is easily made public, could be cited. Yep. All great benefits. Give a minute or so, any more. Yep. Research gets to the public quicker. Flexibility, less submission demands, getting feedback, rapid sharing of results. Yep. It's quite interesting actually that we saw like a huge increase in the number of preprints that were posted during the COVID pandemic. Because suddenly researchers needed to get their work out quite fast. They didn't have time for it to take a year for people to do peer review so that they could get their research out when we were in the middle of a pandemic and a health emergency. So suddenly preprints became a really important tool to get that research out really quickly, even before it's gone through peer review, with the disclaimer that this hasn't been reviewed yet, but there still might be information in here that you can use. So yeah, getting that quick feedback and that quick dissemination was really important at that point in time. Some institutions can acknowledge it for promotions, yep, and encourage early scientific transparency and helps young researchers build a profile. Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of those answers. They're really good benefits of posting preprints. And I do have a second question. Is what do you see as the main concerns of posting preprints? You might not have any, but there are a lot of people that have some concerns about posting preprints or confusion or don't know where to get started. So next question is, what do you see as the main concerns of posting preprints, if you see any? And again, we'll have a couple of minutes here. Same link, so you should be able to do it. Yeah, stolen ideas. University or supervisor might not recognize it. Yeah. And lack of institutional acknowledgement, no immediate peer review. Got stealing data in the chat. Thank you. Risk of misuse, misinterpretation. Yep. Possibility of being scooped in different ways. That's a very common concern. Looks like a new thing, a lot of doubts. So yeah, if you're not very familiar with preprints, there can be a lot of doubts about it, how it works, what is the difference between journals and preprints. Hopefully we're clearing that up a little bit for you today as an introduction. Some researchers are still ignorant, don't want to accept it. Yeah, that's true. It's also very true in different disciplines. So I should say that in sort of the physical sciences, the natural life sciences, preprints are quite common. In humanities, preprints are not so common. So it can also depend on what discipline you work in as to how accepted preprints are, how commonly used they are. Yeah. Some journals still do not accept preprints. That's also true, although that is definitely changing. And media exposure can be dangerous. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go back to my presentation now in the interest of time. So here we've also got some other sort of commonly known commonly cited benefits and concerns. And you can read more about this. So some of the benefits you've mentioned yourself. So free to publish, free to read, greater visibility and reach. You can also claim priority on the work. So in a way, you can also see it as protecting against scooping. If someone does scoop you, you have a citation for your work that was published earlier. Even if that was published in a preprint server, it still counts and it still has discoverability and it will still have a persistent link to it. Increased citations we also see because you have these permanent citable links. Even if it's an earlier version of the work, people can still cite this and you can update the version of the work. So if you get feedback and you get peer review, even if it's through a journal, you can still then sort of link to the published journal version through the preprint. You can link the two together so people can see the version and how the research has developed over time. So it does give you a sort of permanent citable link to your research. Opportunity for early feedback, as we've mentioned as well, because you also have community feedback. It's not guaranteed necessarily, depending on sort of where you post your preprint, but it is possible and is increasing over time. And there's also proof of productivity. So if you want to get your work out sooner, hopefully be acknowledged by your supervisors in your institution. Although again, there are concerns about that and whether that's common everywhere. So common concerns, also things that we've mentioned, so fear of being scooped, incompatibility with journal policies, so something to check if you're looking to publish in a specific journal. Low reliability and credibility is often a concern, lack of peer review, and it takes too long, which is also a common concern. However, I would say that actually getting preprints out there is quite quick, but sometimes getting feedback can take a while longer without a specific sort of traditional peer review process. Just a note here as well that few authors actually have reported being scooped because of preprint posting. So this is probably more of a fear than an actual reality. So these are some of this is from a survey that was done by ASAP Bio back in 2024, so only last year. So has your decision to post a preprint negatively affected you in any of the following ways? Almost 90% said no, which is very positive. Just over about 6.5% said it limited their choice of journal for publication. So if you're looking for a really specific journal and they're not open access, or they're just not very preprint friendly for whatever reason, I did say this is shifting. I think it's becoming a lot more common, but this could limit your choice of journal for publication. But again, only 6.5%. Less than 1% actually said that it prevented from publishing in the journal of choice because another lab published before you. So this is what we are referring to when we say scooping. So not very many people reported that. Just over 1% affected priority claim to the research. So again, a similar sort of idea with the sort of scooping. So not very many people saying that. And then other people had some other concerns, but again, less than 5%. So most people, it did not negatively affect them sort of publishing their work later on or being scooped in any sense. Okay, finding a preprint server that works for you. I will try to catch up on time because I want to make sure that Aneth has time to go over her section as well. There are many different preprint servers available. It can be a little bit overwhelming. Some only accept full manuscripts. Others take different types of research outputs. So you might have ones that accept data and things like that. Or postprint, so they might only accept papers that have already been accepted for publication at a journal. You can find a lot of these sort of different characteristics at the ASAP Bio preprint server directory, so I encourage you to explore that. You can find there are preprint servers for different disciplines. So if you have, if perhaps you're publishing in biology, for example, you might want to go to bioRxiv, or you might have a specific license that you want, and different preprint servers have different licenses. So check out which preprint server serves you best. There are also a couple of general purpose repositories. So the Zenodo and Figshare. These are very, very general purpose. So if you're in doubt, this is always a good place to post your work. And when you submit your preprint, you will create an account on the chosen server if it's required. Upload your preprint file, your manuscript, in the format that they specify. Provide all the necessary metadata that they might need. So this might be the title, the abstract, the authors, if you have any co-authors, keywords, subject area, this sort of thing. Select a suitable copyright and licensing option that works for you. Review your submission, make sure everything's correct, and then you submit it for review by the server's moderators. And usually, again, it depends on the preprint server. Usually then your preprint would be live within a day or a couple of days. It'd be up there pretty quickly. Sometimes it's even quicker than that. I regularly post on Zenodo. It takes maybe about 30 seconds for it to go live. So it can vary depending on what process the preprint server has in terms of reviewing the publications. And I'm now going to pass over to Aneth, who's going to take us through a little bit more about kind of preprints and how they're changing over time, and also a bit about open peer review and to our own experiences.
Yeah, hi everyone once again. For those who have just joined us, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Vanessa, for covering the first part. So it's not that we're just talking about preprints as a theoretical ideal or something we're preaching. So much more people, researchers are adopting preprints every year. And these graphs show the growing number of preprint servers for the past about 4 or 5 years. So we see over the years, but also monthly cumulative chart. So the number of preprint servers is growing, but also the number of preprints that researchers are publishing is growing. And as Vanessa mentioned, preprints really took off during the COVID-19 era, where researchers took to preprints to communicate their findings quickly, and really that was very useful in developing different interventions and vaccines. Can you go next, Vanessa? Yeah, but also when we look at different regions, the adoption in Africa is a bit low still, but we see the trends that preprint adoption is growing across regions, across the continents. Still, as a percentage of preprint output in Africa, we have to do a bit more effort to increase the number. But the trend, as we said, there was a spike during COVID-19. Looks like it's going down, but still, I think many more researchers are adopting preprint adoption, preprint publishing as a way of communicating research findings. So there is a growing interest in publishing research and research process outputs as preprints. Yeah, but also this is not for the researchers who are publishing preprints. Acceptance or recognition of preprints is also growing very fast. As we already mentioned, the number of servers is growing, so like more avenues where researchers can deposit their preprints. Next. But also, as we said, preprints can be proof of productivity. So funding agencies are now accepting preprints as a proof of productivity. We know when you are applying for a fund, you need to show that you have past experience or you have done the work before. In the past, you had to show publications, which was very difficult for early career researchers, especially because of the difficulties in publishing traditional journal articles. But preprints now are accepted as proof of productivity. And next. But also academic institutions are increasingly recognizing preprints as a valid proof of productivity, some for as an academic qualification to graduate, or to when you're applying for a postdoc, you can show a preprint to show that you have expertise in a certain area or you have done research in a certain area. So this is another area where acceptance and recognition of preprints is growing. Next. But also academic journals. So it used to be that preprint servers were a separate entity from traditional journal systems. But as many of you may have recognized, nowadays, many of these traditional journals have their own preprint servers. For example, Research Square. When you're submitting your article, even before they look at it or consider for publication on that platform, they give you an option to publish it as a preprint. And even if it's rejected on their journal, it can remain as a preprint. And as already mentioned, more and more journals now allow to want to publish a preprint, and then even a year or sometime later, you can submit an article for publication. It's not a problem. Most journals, I think, I haven't come across a journal that does not accept preprint publishing or considers it as publication already. Next. So I want to share my personal experience. I was looking at my Google Scholar profile. I have about 8 preprints published so far. And the image on the right is a screenshot of one of those. And some of these preprints went to become journal articles, but others, myself and co-authors have decided to leave them as preprints because it's already a valid way of communicating findings or research process. And at the moment, I publish as a preprint, or I preprint almost all my papers before submitting for publication. Sometimes I don't want to go through the publication process, which is not easy, as you know, or I don't have the time yet, so I just publish as a preprint. And when I have time, I go back to publishing and submit for publication. But it wasn't easy to get to this point, especially when I was doing my PhD. Before you publish a preprint, you have to agree with co-authors. It's the same as when you're publishing a paper. So I had to convince supervisors who were very hesitant at the first, but later they were fine. And now I think before publishing a paper, they'll be like, which preprint server can we deposit so that the findings are out there? So the same preprint that you see above was published on Nature Human Behavior as an article, and as you can see under the preprint, they say now published Nature Human Behavior and DOI, but they remain separate. They remain separate entities, separate articles, and on my Google Scholar profile, actually, they are one of the most cited papers for me, and they both have their own citations because they are separate articles and they have their own DOI. So if you're worried whether you can publish a paper after publishing as a preprint because of requirements and other reasons, yes, that is possible, as demonstrated with this one example. Next. So another thing that is growing rapidly is not just publishing preprints, but also receiving feedback from the community, which can be researchers, experts, but also the general community. It used to be only journal articles go through the review process or peer review process, but also nowadays preprints also receive feedback, and that strengthen the preprints. And several platforms already engaging in receiving feedback, community feedback on preprints. And usually it's really constructive feedback that can help strengthen the preprint or lead to collaborations even. Next. So let's look a bit about open peer review, especially focusing on preprints. Next. Yeah, so although it may be a new concept to several people, but open peer review is already being done by different journals and platforms. Here we give some examples. For example, eLife has already moved on from the traditional journal publishing system to this open peer review process. Next. And as we already mentioned, preprints are also now being reviewed and receiving feedback from community of researchers and the general public. Next. Yeah, and here are some of the platforms that perform preprint peer review. Over 35 platforms at the moment when we are preparing the slides, probably more came to light. Of particular interest, of course, is PREreview. We will cover more in detail in the next session, but these are all platforms which allow and facilitate review of preprints and make those review open for other people to see. And they range in the form of how that review, how open, how flexible it is. It's a spectrum, really. It's no one size fits all. But as you can see, it's a growing number of platforms or institutions who are engaging in preprint review and publishing those reviews. Next. Yeah, apart from preprint publication growing, but also the process or the practice of reviewing preprints is also growing. Here's a snapshot of about 11 years, close to 11 years, where it shows the number of preprint reviews on biomed and society increasing. So it's not a very new practice. It's a relatively new practice, but a lot of people and researchers are already doing it. It's a growing practice. Next. So let's take a few minutes to look at PREreview. Next. Which is a platform that facilitates preprints review. It's not only a platform for reviewing and publishing the reviews of preprints, but also it's a resource center and a place where researchers or people who share a common belief in open research can meet. So it's a global platform that supports open and constructive review of preprints, the same as how journal articles are reviewed, but PREreview supports review of preprints. provides mentorship and training for reviewers. I'm one of those reviewers. I was in this year's cohort of pre-review champions, and a lot of my expertise or knowledge on open peer review systems came from this training, this program. But also it's really a community that provides resources in the workflow that can give a starting point in terms of reviewing. Next slide. So yes, as already said, it's a peer review training. It's a peer review platform, but also provides training. But also it's an open platform with minimal, no barriers really, but just minimal requirements. Anybody with an ORCID can engage in providing review as little as you can, as much as you can, depending on your expertise, availability, and time. But also it's a place for community of like thinkers where they can meet and exchange information and review preprints and publish those preprints. Next, those reviews of preprints. Next. Yeah, so maybe because of time, can you type in the chat or okay, raise your hand if you have ever reviewed a preprint or commented on a preprint. It can be on a platform, a formal platform like PREreview, but it can also be on social media. For example, bioRxiv post all the papers they publish on X, and people can sometimes engage with those. So I'm not seeing any hands being raised. Nobody has ever reviewed or commented on a preprint before?
Yes, there's one hand raised.
Oh, nice. I see Abdul Shakur. Yeah, nice. So I think it's an experience that we should all aim to have. And we hope over after the next session, we can all engage in the process. Next. So to conclude, as we already spoken, preprints can enhance the speed and accessibility of research dissemination. I think this is one of the main points for me when I publish preprints. There are many, but this is one of the main points. But they allow for feedback, quick and early feedback from community, can be researchers or experts, but also the general community. So many options to choose from in terms of servers, disciplines, like whatever your need and goal, there is a platform for you. But also the number of preprints being published, more and more people are publishing preprints and more people are reviewing preprints. And next time, we'll focus more about how to provide an open and constructive peer review of preprints. So today is just a start. If this is the first time you're hearing about preprints or preprints review, but there are communities that provide support to publish review preprints. To engage, you can just start by publishing and review or reviewing or commenting on preprints. There's so many guidelines out there. ASAP Bio website, which is linked in the chat as well, has a lot of resources. If you're looking for a server, you don't know where to publish a preprint, just go to ASAP Bio website. A community of people who are publishing preprint, asking questions and supporting each other in different programs, like how to make institutions recognize preprints. ASAP Bio is running that initiative at the moment. There is a fellows program. The deadline for this year is closed, but I think it's going to be open next year again. And PREreview as well, a lot of resources again about preprints review, a community of very enthusiastic people about preprints peer review. We conduct monthly live reviews of different papers. You can just look if a preprint suits you. You can join. We read in advance, and then when we meet, we discuss together and construct a review, and then we publish that. And as was already mentioned, when that review is published, it's linked to your ORCID account, so it can be a proof of productivity as well. Preprint review clubs, you can start one or you can join one. Importantly, there is an open call for a pre-review champions. The link is in the chat. I was a pre-review champion, still am. I really recommend this program to early career researchers or any researcher. Important skills, a community of people, and I think I reviewed a lot of my preprints during this program than before. So please do apply, do check it out and apply for the pre-review program. But otherwise, please join us for the next session. It's going to be on 2nd December. There is a link in the chat. If you can scan the QR code or copy the link, do register for the next session. And this one will be more on open peer review, more practical for in terms of open peer review. That is all from me. And thank you, everybody. Back to you, Vanessa.
Thanks so much, Aneth. I hope that was some useful information for everybody. We will make the slides available so that you can read over them. The webinar's also been recorded today, so we can share the recording as well. But does anyone have any questions for the last sort of 5 minutes of today's call? And as Aneth said, we'll be running the next session, I think next Tuesday. And we'll go through lots of practical steps on how to do a good peer review, where to find preprints to review, how to get credit for peer reviewing, and we'll show you kind of how it works in practice on the peer review platform as well. So yeah, happy to be here for the next sort of 5 minutes, answer any questions that anyone has. That's all for today. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for all for your attention. Thank you so much to Andy, Inas for hosting this webinar, and for Aneth for being my fantastic co-presenter.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. We look forward to those questions and comments.
And if anyone does have any questions afterwards, I'm just going to pop my email in the chat as well. So if anyone does have any questions, you can find me there as well. You can always drop an email. Does anyone have to have prior engagement with peer review to apply? You don't have to have prior engagement. It is beneficial if you do, just because generally the basis of the Champions program is to engage others in peer review. But if you've got general knowledge of kind of the open science space, you know how peer review works generally, it's not necessarily a precursor. It's just a benefit if you've already worked with us before in some capacity, but not all of our champions have. What do we mean by community in the Champions Call? So when we say to engage community, we mean kind of your local community. So this might be other early careers, this might be people at your institution. It could be a wider community than that. It could be, I know some of our champions have given talks at conferences, for example. So we kind of mean like your community that you work with. So if you work with other early careers researchers and you want to engage people in reviewing preprints, that's great. So it's kind of that sort of thing. So when we say community engagement, it's up to you to decide who that community is. And it might be the people you work with, or it might be a wider community than that. I hope that sort of has answered the question there. And by being a pre-review champion, you also join the pre-review community as well. So there's kind of a community of champions to help you. We also have a mentorship program as part of that. And we also have our own sort of Slack community as well, where we have people online who are discussing preprints and discussing peer review. We welcome everyone to join that. And if you're interested in that, I can also pop the link into the chat for folks as well. And we'd love to see you there. But yeah, if you have any questions about the champions specifically, you can always send me an email. My email address is in the chat. Any other questions before we end the call today? Andy, I don't know if you have anything you want to say.
No, I was just about to say that it's obviously a very comprehensive presentation. I thought it was really good from both of you. Very, very informative. And I guess that's the reason that there's no further questions.
That's the case. I think we can say goodbye
Yeah,
and thank you very much, everybody,
yeah,
and hopefully see you next week.
yes. Yeah, do you follow the link in the chat box and join the next session. Thank you very much, Vanessa and Aneth, for this session, and we will see you again next time. We'll share the recording of this with you as well. So, but thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.